You know, for years, the PlayStation 5 felt like this untouchable fortress. Sony built this incredible walled garden, and its security, it seemed absolutely unbreakable. But in the world of console hacking, every lock is really just a puzzle waiting for the right key. And in 2026, well, that key was found. So buckle up, we're going to dive into the incredible story of how the PS5's lock was picked for good.
And look, I'm not exaggerating here. When I say permanently, I mean permanently. We're not talking about some temporary software glitch that Sony can just fix with a quick update. No. We are talking about a fundamental, unpatchable compromise right at the hardware level.
The scale of this is, well, it's just staggering. This vulnerability affects pretty much every single PS5 that was in circulation up to this point. We're talking around 80 million machines. Think about it. Consoles in living rooms from Tokyo to Toronto are now essentially unlocked.
So that's the big question, right? How on earth did this happen? How does a multi-billion-dollar corporation completely lose control of its flagship product? The answer is a wild ride involving a leak of digital master keys, a forgotten Star Wars game from 2002, and a seriously dedicated community of hackers. It's a real digital detective story, and we're going to piece it all together.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. We got to start at the very foundation of the problem, the hardware itself. This isn't some software bug that can be squashed. Oh no. This is a flaw that was physically forged, baked right into the console's processor from day one.
Okay, so to really get this, we have to talk about something called the BootROM. The easiest way to think about it is like the building code for a skyscraper, literally poured into the concrete foundation. It's the very first piece of code the console runs when you hit that power button, and it holds the master keys that check everything else. It's called the root of trust for a reason, and here's the kicker. Because it's physically etched into the silicon, it can never be changed, ever.
And then, this happened. This is the crime scene, right here. On New Year's Eve 2025, those unchangeable, unfixable master keys were just leaked online. Suddenly, the keys to the entire kingdom were just out there, for anyone to see. This single event just blew the doors wide open for anyone wanting to take apart the PS5 security.
And this right here, this is what puts it all into perspective. You see, previous PlayStation hacks, they were all software-based. Annoying for Sony, for sure, but they could eventually patch them. But look at the PS5 column. The breach is at the hardware level. And under fixability, unpatchable, silicon locked. This is a whole other ballgame, a totally different league of security failure.
So, okay, the keys are out in the wild. But that's just the theory, right? How do you actually use them to unlock a console? Well, the answer is, honestly, it's stranger than fiction. It involves a super obscure game and a piece of software everyone forgot existed.
So the N, it wasn't through some super modern, high-tech part of the PS5. Nope. It was hiding in this dusty, old corner of the console, the internal PlayStation 2 emulator. A tiny piece of software designed to run old games. The exploit chain, which they called Masticar, used a classic type of vulnerability to basically force its way in through that old code.
And get this is the weapon they used to break in. Not some sophisticated hacking tool, but an actual physical disk copy of Star Wars Racer Revenge for the PS4. Turns out, there was a specific bug in the game's Hall of Fame menu that let researchers inject their own code, take control of the emulator, and get that first, crucial foothold into the system.
And you can guess what happened next, right? The second this discovery went public, the market just went nuts. It was immediate, and frankly a little bizarre. A game that, let's be honest, nobody had thought about in 2 decades suddenly became the most valuable piece of plastic in the entire gaming world.
And yeah, this chart just shows you the absolute frenzy. I mean, look at that. In December 2025, you could probably find this game at a bargain bin for $20. By January 2026, after the news broke, sellers were asking and getting $400 for it. This forgotten racing game literally became a golden ticket overnight.
So you might be asking, why the disc? Why was that physical copy so important? Well, it all comes down to the difference between the PS5 models. If you have the disc edition, you can use the game offline, which means you can stay on a vulnerable firmware version forever. But if you have the digital edition, you're kind of stuck. You have to connect to the PlayStation Network to get your games. And that means you're forced to update, which patches the whole thing.
And this quote right here, from a user on the PS5 Jailbreak subreddit, just perfectly sums it up for all the digital console owners out there. They've got the right console, maybe even on the right firmware, but no way to actually trigger the exploit. So they're just stuck. patiently waiting for some other kind of hack to come along. Okay, so the console's wide open. What's the big deal? What does that actually mean for people? And I know for a lot of folks, the word jailbreak just screams piracy. But for the homebrew community, man, it's about so much more. It's about unlocking what this incredible piece of hardware you paid for can really do.
I mean, this just blows the doors off the possibilities. We're talking about finally getting games like Bloodborne to run at a stable, silky smooth 60 frames per second. Yes, please. Or how about installing a full Linux operating system, basically turning your game console into a super-powered PC? It also opens the door for incredible new emulators, and maybe most importantly in the long run, it allows for game preservation, totally independent of Sony's server.
And look, we have to give credit where credit is due. None of this just magically happened. It's all thanks to the incredible ingenuity of researchers like TheFlow, who found the kernel exploit, designer Leak, who was the one who spotted the bug in Star Wars, and Gezine, who polished the tools to make them stable. This wasn't some random accident. It was this incredible, collaborative effort from some seriously smart people. So what's Sony's move in all this? Well, with a breach this deep, this baked into the silicon, they're in a really, really tough spot. They can push out software updates all day long, but it's kind of like slapping a Band-Aid on a crack in a building's foundation. It doesn't fix the real problem. This table pretty much lays out Sony's only real move here. Any PS5 sold before 2026, the launch models, the Slims, they all share the same leaked BootROM keys. They are vulnerable forever. The only actual fix is to manufacture brand new hardware revisions like the PS5 Pro with redesigned silicon and new secret keys. And what that does is create this permanent split in the PS5 world, the older, hackable consoles and the newer, locked-down ones.
And that really brings us to the big question this whole story leaves us with. This whole battle between a corporation's control and what you can do with the machine you bought, it really makes you think. When you buy a console, do you truly own that piece of hardware? Or are you just licensing a service that they control? And after seeing all this, the story of the permanent PS5 jailbreak, well, it suggests the answer is way more complicated than you might think.